I was born into hunting dogs. From the time I guess I was around 3, my dad would take me coon hunting. He in the early '90s had a couple tree and walker coon hounds. So growing up with that and coon hunting, I was very much involved in that. Spent a lot of time studying pedigrees and kind of following the world of the competition coon hounds and kind of being introduced into that aspect of working dogs. I guess about the time I was coming into 11 or 12, there was a little bit of a feral hog explosion in population in this area. And there had been people around here that had hunted hogs for years before this already, one of which was James Land, who he was known at the time as pretty much the best out there. And I actually had him as a teacher growing up in school and went with him a couple times when I was about 12. And after that, that kind of ruined anything else for me as far as working dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Hog dogs was all I wanted to be around and what I wanted to do. So got with a good group of friends, and that's what we focused on for the following years. And by the time we graduated high school, around 2007, we had some really nice working hog dogs. They were a little bit of a mixture. For the most part, they were mostly made up of cur dog with a little bit of running walker in them. What people use to hunt coyotes here, like a foxhound type, and then a little bit of bulldog to help with the catching bred into them.
Mm-hmm.
And we really didn't use any catch dogs. We didn't have any lead-in catch dogs or any pit bulls or anything like that. That was just what we hunted. They were all that makeup of dog. And there was quite a few people here in the area that use that type of dog, and it was kind of a proven cross. So that's what we did. And then I went on to college and had to leave that pack of dogs behind, and I didn't hunt near as much. My buddies, they stuck with it, and they ended up making just some really nice working hog dogs and a couple generations of it. And graduated college 4 years later. Didn't really know what I wanted to do as far as a career. I just knew that I wanted to have some hunting dogs. So I started working on getting a pack put together using some of the dogs that my buddies had kept and were hunting. And I also had been hunted a couple times with a gentleman in our area named James Kent, and he had a male stud dogo and bred it to a cur dog on his yard. And I bought a pup out of that. It was a half dogo. And that was going to be the catch type dog that I had in my pack. I was going to use him for running catch dog. Well, about a year after graduating college, I moved into my own place, and I moved in with Ashley. And her little bit of background for her and working dogs is her and her family moved down here when she was in high school. And Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, I don't know if you've heard a whole lot about them, but it's a premier breeding site for military working dogs. And they have a program where they foster out dogs for people. They're going to be military type dogs, and people will raise them, put a handle on them. It's a very strict set of guidelines that they have to follow. And Ashley and her family were very much involved in that. Her parents still are today. They do a lot of volunteer work over at Lackland, helping with the military program. And she raised a couple Malinois while in high school that went on to do some great things for the military. And then they also adopted a few that flunked out of the system. But she was very knowledgeable as far as the handle of a dog. And that's where I learned a lot of that was through Ashley. But anyway, when we moved in together, I had to sell off most of my pack just because it was our first place together and because of the size of the place. And the one dog that I ended up keeping was that half dogo. And for about a year or so, I stayed away. I hunted when I could, which wasn't much, and it was probably the most out of it I had been since I was 12 for the last 10 years that I've been hunting. And later on, when we got engaged and moved out to a bigger place and had our first real setup to where we were able to do so, Ashley talked about how she wanted to get into dogs and working dogs specifically. And we talked about what we'd be interested in. And our half dogo that we kept, Blitzen was his name. We were starting to hunt him. He was probably about 18 months old, and we were cutting the itch to where we'd just take him in the woods with the one or two leftover dogs that I had from my pack. And, it really wasn't about a whole lot of success, but it was just kind of fun watching the dogs work and then having something to do. So we talked about trying to really get back into it seriously and getting into working dogs. And I asked Ashley what she thought as far as what direction we could go. And she had been studying a lot about purebred dogos and the dogos that were out there. And that's what we ended up going with. And I asked her, I said, if we were going to do this, we should probably maybe try to do our research and get a dogo that can do it all. Because from what I had seen from years hunting and what I'd heard about people that had the right dogos, there were some out there that were capable of finding their own hog, catching it, and holding it. And I thought that'd be kind of a cool project, something different to work on. And in theory, it made a lot of sense for us and for how we were going to probably end up hunting. So in 2014, right in December, we went and visited the Stacy's and Flying G Kennel in Oklahoma, I think Blanchard, Oklahoma. And it was their second litter of Dogo pups from a male named Walicho of Cazador Creole, which they're a real famous kennel in Europe. I don't know the exact country, but they're kind of known for having a muscular, athletic type looking Dogo. And they had bred him to what is a Lacocha female from Texano Bravo based out of Texas. They were real good friends with the owner of that kennel. And Lacocha is another really popular, probably the most popular as far as working line out there. You can find a lot of dogs that have Lacocha in their background. But so this pup was basically a half Lacocha, kind of half Cazador Creole type pup. She was a female named Banshee. And being around working dogs all my life and owning all types of pups across all different ways and several different breeds. And Ashley, too, with her background in dogs. And we just both fell in love with this pup. She was just everything we want as far as her temperament. And then her parents, she was just kind of a freak, just a super long-legged, athletic type dog. There wasn't even a whole lot of Dogos out there that looked like Banshee did at the time, which was only 5 years ago. But even then, you can find a lot more of her type now than I think you could back then. She was just an excellent built pup, and we just fell in love with the breed and been rolling with it since that. But that's a little bit of background on us and how we got where we are now.
And talk about your beginning experiences with the Dogo when you're out on the hog hunts. How has it been a different experience than the other dogs that you've been around?
Well, I've hunted with Dogos a few different times while we were still doing the cur dog thing and
Mm-hmm.
when I was younger. And there's a lot of hog hunters in this part of the world, South Texas. It's not uncommon to drive down the road and see a dog box, and it's somebody that has hog dogs, and everybody's got every kind of different style you can think of. I would say the vast majority have a kind of crossed up dogs like I was referring to earlier, and they may have a lead in pit bull or something. And there's a few people out there that have a lead in Dogo that they use, and there's some people even more hard to find, but there are people out there that will run a Dogo on the ground as like a running catch dog type thing. So I knew the Dogo as a hunting breed before. I'd been a little bit experienced with them. But I think what we were trying to do, though, when we sought out with this, was we wanted to have a little bit of a specific reason why we were going to use an all Dogo pack. And by hunting with these other styles of dogs and seeing them and working with them, you learn a lot. And one thing that I learned is I don't want to chase hogs, especially nowadays. From even the 15 years ago, from when I started, there was a lot more pasture, a lot bigger acres that you had to run. And there was a race. It wasn't that big of an issue. But the longer I did this and the more I saw shorter range dogs that are quicker to grab a hog instead of try to chase or bay, I think that this was just a better way to go. So we wanted to get dogs that were